So, in one of his latest videos, Veemon talked a bit about why most of the game journalists are so progressive, as he says. And that reminded me of something. And so I made a video response. Am I cool now? Anyway, he made a good point that once being a news publication was respectable and you needed all those people to run it properly, the newsboys, the people who would deliver the news to wherever, the workers on news presses and all that stuff. But then the technology improved and number of necessary employees decreased as that industry expanded. And you can basically see that what happened then is very similar to what now happens with clickbait. Because with the improvement of technology there was a rise of these less serious publications, tabloids, and they had to compete for readers. So while the established and serious publications had fairly tame titles of articles, just saying this thing happened, simple and informative, because they already had established reader base and just didn't really have to worry about having to attract the same audience again and again just to survive, basically. Tabloids, on the other hand, were trying to one-up each other with this atrocious, unbelievable thing happened and reading this article will change your life type of headlines, as well as introducing gossip, basically, and being more sensationalist than others, just to keep the attention of reader base that was very unstable. And with the rise of the internet, two major things happened. Information moves fast, and consequentially so do articles. As Veemon said, the money goes in from the advertising. Articles aren't a product no longer, they are just a means to get the real product, people's clicks. And so the first thing was that tabloids got, basically they got super saiyan. Bloggers, and I'm using the term because I can't call these people journalists, found a new way to produce more quote-unquote content. It's in quotes because again, it isn't actually content. They realized they actually don't have to write the articles, and so were born the content aggregators like the much hated BuzzFeed. And the more tame tabloids evolved into clickbait sites. The second thing that happened was the withering of traditional media. It's not dead, you all know that. It's weakened, but it's limping along and it's gonna stay here a few more years. But it's weakened. And that's why you see newspapers like Guardian publishing tabloid shit on their webs. Because on the internet they didn't have the huge presence they had in the world of print, plus they have the disadvantage that the younger generations are pretty much used to reading the clickbaits already, which of course can work to Guardian's advantage. And so now they do compete for an unstable and fleeting reader base by being all sensationalist, which is troubling. Veemon said that in Romania, Guardian is still perceived as this serious publication, and the same thing is true of Czech Republic, frankly. And that basically means our country people aren't up to date, really, are they? Because, don't get me wrong, having such a serious newspaper on the web is useful. You get to know news from outside your country, from all around the world, except when you don't know about clickbaits and the newspaper starts to publish them, you get surrounded by a low quality content really fast without even realizing it. Of course, I think that's a backwards way to go, because it rapidly devaluates the paper's worth. Because what I think is the worth of a news outlet should be measured in how good the content is, which basically means how accurate it is. If they did research, if they investigated, what sources did they use, and so on. A good example on articles worth that I can give is game sites and game reviews. You can have an article titled simply a review of Hitman. that holds up because it has relevant info about the game, what are the game mechanics like, the level design, the graphics, and touching the story in such a way as not to reveal any spoilers. Of course, the journalist can and should also add his or her view on the things he or she described, so we can put it to perspective and contrast their reasons why they liked or disliked it, and contrast it with the opinion we made based on the factual information contained in the article. Now, that article will have clicks and reads because people will find it informative and interesting. And then you can have an article titled "Hitman is a misogynistic game, a review", which will contain all but descriptions of the game mechanics, with the only exception they will be mentioned if you can use them to as much as touch women NPCs. Instead, such an article will contain some length of describing how terribly patriarchal our culture is and how this game offends the sensibilities of everybody who has half a brain, and how the industry needs to change, blah blah blah. This article, of course, doesn't hold its water as a game review, and at that point gamers stop caring because they didn't find anything they came here for. But that article gets clicks too. Not because people like it, well, okay, there are certain types who would like it. Not because it holds useful information, God forbid that, but because of inflammatory sensationalist title and all the people who click on it just to see what the fuck is this about. Then they see, let's say, Gamma Sutra, and hightail it out of there. But it's too late. It's too late. The click has already been made. Now to throw in a bit of my perspective. I've been playing games since early 2000s. Yeah, you might say what a new fag. And you're right. But that's almost 15 years now. And I read actual paper gaming magazines back then because I didn't have the internet yet. And you can believe they were absolutely packed with info relevant to the games, computers and the industry. The reviews, they were basically the place where I learned how you can judge a game, what to mention about it when you're reviewing it, and how objectivity and subjectivity weave together to produce a balanced review. So when I go and compare these old reviews to what the gaming sites are able to produce nowadays, I find a newfound respect for people who actually still take time and effort to write a worthwhile article. Now, that's how it still should be, right? I'd like to say it's nothing extraordinary, but when I see how quote-unquote journalists on certain sites behave, I just have to commend those who still can write a worthwhile game review or just a worthwhile article. You know, one that actually reports something or informs about something. So in short, I think many of the news outlets on the internet, not just the gaming sites, got to the point where they forsake the reader. Which we gamers of course already know, but it doesn't have to be as extreme as declaring the reader base dead. The clickbait competition basically supports focus on the final outcome, the basically consequence, which is the clicks, and almost ignores the very base, which is content worthy of those clicks. The websites are skipping a step here, so no wonder they sometimes fall flat on their faces. And that's about it. So that's been my opinion on not just the gaming journalism these days. I hope you got something worth your time out of it. If you have any suggestions, anything to add, opinions, or if you just want to insult me, put it in the comments. Bye, shitlords.